All right, time for another episode of Ben Davies Off Script. Sorry I'm late with this one. I know, but please understand, we have a 2-week-old child. Sleep is hard to come by. It's hard to get things done. But I still want to get an episode out this week because it is so crazy. And because of that, I'm just going to dive right into the first story. You may have heard about this election that happened in Virginia, a governorship won by Glenn Youngkin. Well, this sent shockwaves through the mainstream media and on social media and the Twitterverse and you know, Facebook's new metaverse or whatever Mark Zuckerberg is creating. Everyone has lost their mind, but none of the people that are losing their mind are better than the mainstream media on the left, specifically MSNBC. Check this out. I'll discuss why this is such a big deal.
I think we know the answer to some of this. I watched Glenn Youngkin's interviews on Fox News, and he did nothing that he did not. I mean, he worshipped at the altar of Donald Trump on Fox News. He flew an insurrection flag at his rallies. He simply didn't. He played dumb about a Zoom rally. He did not really put much distance between himself and Donald Trump on the big lie or the deadly insurrection in which police officers were maimed by flagpoles. So I think that the real ominous thing is that critical race theory, which isn't real, turned the suburbs 15 points to the Trump insurrection endorsed Republican. What do Democrats do about that?
It's just such a great meltdown and just a word salad of nonsense buzzwords of just things that are bad. You racist, insurrectionist, bigoted, big lie, blah, 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 blah. Not the fact that, I don't know, so many people are rising up and pushing against this agenda that's happening in all these cities and states where people are fleeing and picking up their bags, selling their homes, and going to states where they have a freedom and their children are not forced to learn that they're racist in schools with this CRT nonsense. Maybe it has something to do with that, not that this echo chamber, but this liberal elite buzzword nonsense that is spewed out on MSNBC is so shocking. And the fact that she opens up with talking about not distancing himself from all these horrible things. Glenn Youngkin basically won Virginia as the governorship, which has not been won in decades by someone on the right or conservative or whatever in forever, running solely pretty much on being a Christian and being pro-life and being against CRT. And this woman is losing her minds. And it should wake a lot of people up because this state in Virginia was 10 points the other direction in the presidential voting last year. So everyone is getting a good, hard taste of reality, specifically these suburban women that she is so mad about. And this is like the best part where she's like, oh, well, it's just these suburban women who just don't know what they're talking about. Maybe these are people who have an investment in the future, i.e. their children. They don't want their children being taught they're horrible people because of the melanin in their skin, the way they were born with these CRT classes. And then she has the audacity to look into the camera and lie, which is it isn't real. It's not being taught. This woke agenda is not being foisted on your children at your taxpayer dollar. She has the audacity to say that. It is absolutely shocking. And then just to espouse the myth of like these racist people in agenda, that there these racist people in Virginia rising up and you know, voting for this guy strictly on that basis. Winsome Sears, this woman who just won the same election was going on, okay, in Virginia. Like there was another election the same day. She is now the first female woman of color to serve as Virginia lieutenant governor. And she's a Republican. A black female won there too. First time ever in Virginia. How cool is it? It's amazing. So cool, right? And she also ran strictly based on being just a Christian. Like if you look at any of her videos on YouTube or Facebook, you got to go check it out. It's fantastic. She seems like she's just an awesome Christian woman. You know, she immigrated here with her dad. She even started legally, and she started serving the military like early on, even before she was a citizen. Like a great American story, right? And yet she has the audacity to hint at and push an idea that these people were just racist because that's why they voted, you know, Glenn Youngkin and these other conservatives in. It's just so the big lie that you have to tell is someone like this. Like just you have to ignore reality entirely and just live in a completely artificially constructed world where everything just means that you're morally right. And so if something doesn't go your way, then these people must be morally wrong. It's so shocking and hilarious. But let me just address the CRT thing, because everyone who probably watches this channel or follows people that are more conservative or Christian has seen people go to their school boards, read the actual literature to the school board, which is open CRT racist nonsense, or just some like really foul woke stuff where they're like showing the pictures, which are disgusting, which I can't talk about on Facebook. or just reading the curriculum to them. Like, obviously this has happened. And I mean, specifically, like, there's another woman who took the time to go to her school board and say just that.
My children are now in private school and are thriving. We had specifically moved chased out of LCPS due to the swift and uncompromising political agenda of Superintendents Williams, Ziegler, and the school board that have forced upon us. First, it was in early spring of 2020 when my 6-year-old somberly came to me and asked me if she was born evil because she was a white person, something she learned in a history lesson at school. Then you kept the schools closed for a year and a half despite the science indicating that it was safe for kids to return. And now you've covered up a rape, then arrested, humiliated, and falsely accused her parents of being domestic terrorists. I wish I could return my kids to LCPS. Private school is expensive, and I want my kids to be able to walk home from school with their friends in their own community. I refuse to allow you to destroy our schools. They are not your schools, they are our schools. You all should be ashamed, and you should have the moral courage to admit you are wrong and step down.
Preach, sister. I love that she just, I mean, like, this is the reality. It's not the fake scripted nonsense that they have to, that are so forcibly contrived that the mainstream media and people in big tech are following to a T. This is the reality. When your daughter comes home and is like, am I evil because of the way I was born? And this, if you want to see a red wave of people and Christians rising and be like, no, this is absolutely not. This is completely antithetical to the Bible. We are all made in God's image. This is nonsense. Like, this is absolute. This is you're not even allowed to teach the Bible in school, and you're going to teach this kind of racist nonsense. It's fantastic to see mothers going out and speaking against this. And this woman, kudos to her. But you may say, Ben, these are just passionate parents. They were reading too far into this. Maybe this child misheard. Maybe it was just the teacher asking questions. Maybe there wasn't anything intended behind it. Well, let's hear from a teacher and hear what he has to say.
I'm the science coach and admin in the largest public school district in Indiana. I'm in dozens of classrooms a week, so I see exactly what we're teaching our students. When we tell you that schools aren't teaching critical race theory, that it's nowhere in our standards, that's misdirection. We don't have the quotes and theories as state standards per se. We do have critical race theory in how we teach. We tell our teachers to treat students differently based on color. We tell our students that every problem is a result of white men, and that everything Western civilization built is racist. Capitalism as a tool of white supremacy. Those are straight out of Kimberly Crenshaw's main points, verbatim, in Critical Race Theory, the writings that formed the movement. This is in math, history, science, English, the arts, and it's not slowing down. If students of color have lower reading scores, it's because of inequity. Therefore, we take from the white students and give to the color students. That's Richard Delgado, straight out of CRT and Introduction. All teaching is political, with reality and facts taking the back seat. That's Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, who outlined how she saw critical race theory fleshed out in public schools in 1995. When schools tell you that we aren't teaching critical race theory, it means one thing. Go away and look into our affairs no further.
How shocking and terrifying is that? Who wants to send their kids to public schools right now? Thank goodness that my children are young enough to where hopefully we get this out by the time they are going to school. But I hope this wakes up a lot of people that have children, that have a dog in the fight, that have some skin in the game and care about what's happening to their children. If not, the children around them. Like, we are members of this community. We're the body of Christ. And if this kind of thing is being taught, obviously we need to do something about it. And, it's inspiring to me, and it gives me a little hope seeing that there's so many people going to these places, including Jay Cutler, the former quarterback of the Bears. He lives down the road in Tennessee. And even he is running for his school board because this stuff is happening. Like, they get your kids on your dollar to be indoctrinated to resent your country, to think your parents are wrong, and then to question and judge people on race, throughout the day and with the people around them. Like, it is shocking what is happening in a lot of these public schools, and it's so great that now these things are coming to light. It's a shame that a lot of bad things had happened from the Loudoun County story that I talked about last time. And hopefully this will put a stop to all that stuff. But the audacity for the mainstream media to go out there and say to your face on MSNBC, like, CRT, it's a lie. It's just, and it does give you a little more grace too when you talk to people that maybe don't know what's going on. They're like, oh, I just want people to be treated fairly or equally, or some surface level platitude that is always pushed that is secretly a Trojan horse of absolute communist like nonsense or whatever. It does give you a little bit of empathy just knowing that it's not it's so much easier, and people shouldn't have to question literally everything that goes on TV. Unfortunately, you see this played out. I mean, this is the reality. They're all following this script. They're all on script on these major networks and on big tech. I think there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about on Facebook. Hopefully, please go subscribe to the Ben Davies Off Script on YouTube, and we can say a little bit more. But that is just the story that the media is telling, and this is the reality. Another interesting story the media has been telling a lot of people is that this kid in Kenosha is a horrible white supremacist, and was looking for trouble and killed these people at a mostly peaceful protest. And of course, this story, if you haven't heard about it, is the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. This case is now being heard. I was very worried that this kid was going to get the book thrown at him because I knew the media pressure and the social media pressure and the activists in the community would do their best to make sure this guy got the book thrown at him. He was there armed with an AR-15, was attacked several times, and ended up killing somebody. Rosenbaum, I believe, was the guy's name who was killed. And this case is going on right now, and if you were someone who casually watched MSNBC, CNN, or just check things on Twitter, you would think that this guy is, on his way to the electric chair. However, the real court case is happening right now, and when reality is pushed in front of people, like when actual witnesses go up and talk, when the prosecutor does his best to spin the situation away to make Kyle the bad guy, it doesn't go so well. Check this out.
I mean, you have no idea what Mr. Rosenbaum was ever thinking at any point in his life. You have never been inside his head. You never met him before. You don't know.
I've never exchanged words with him, if that's what your question is.
So your interpretation of what he was trying to do or was intending to do or anything along those lines is complete guesswork, isn't it?
Well, he said, "F you," and then he reached for the weapon.
So just so you know, Rosenbaum is the guy that Kyle Rittenhouse unfortunately killed, but in blatant self-defense when he was, pulling for a firearm, was going to kill him. And this witness, it's so funny to hear these lawyers try to spin this. Like, well, you didn't know that, this guy was going to do any harm to him. And it's like, well, actually he said an expletive and reached for the gun. So I kind of did. Like, it's just so great though to see these lawyers stumble and fall trying to prove that this guy was out, trying to harm these like innocent people who were peacefully protesting. Here's another great clip. Actually, I got to show.
I stepped in and told everybody, chill out, calm down, stop doing that. I turned and had an exchange with one of the protesters, and I kind of explained to that protester, hey, I get what you're trying to do, but, like, not this. And when I turned around, Rosenbaum was right there in front of my face, yelling and screaming, and I said, dude, back up, just chill. I don't know what your problem is. And he goes, you know what? If I catch any of you guys alone tonight, I'm going to kill you.
And he said that to you?
Correct.
Did he say that to the defendant as well?
The defendant was there, so yes.
So, yeah, he did hear that too. I was so worried about this case because it is the most blatant. I mean, everything was on. Thank goodness there were so many cameras in the area, or this kid would probably be on his way to the electric chair. But no, he was the kid that was attacked. He was running towards the police, like, help. And after this other incident, and then a guy with a skateboard ran up, beat him to the ground, and was about to hit him again, and he went up and fired at him. There's parts of this case that are just absolutely shocking, but it's great to see this prosecutor like, oh, so was he there? And he's like, yeah, he was there, and I definitely heard this guy threatening him, and we knew. Speaking of this guy, too, I do have to point out that he is also the guy who was killed by Kyle Rittenhouse, was a convicted child molester, had other violent history. He is not exactly what you'd call I don't know, an angel as far as going out to peacefully protest. Had a history of stuff. Kyle Rittenhouse did not. So I'm going to follow this case pretty closely because I think this is a very, very important case involving self-defense, and also the fact the media immediately labeled Kyle Rittenhouse like a white supremacist. Joe Biden, in his campaign, one of his campaign videos, was basically said just that about Kyle Rittenhouse. That this was like the face of this evil coalition that I am campaigning against. We had to vote for me because you don't want to be on the side of Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, the fact that you could do that before that case was hadn't even gone through, and the fact that it is so opposite of what happened in reality, when you actually see all the clips, is shocking. It's not quite as shocking as the fact that the Braves in some happy news, finally won the World Series. I was really happy about that. It's been the fact that I'm relatively close to Atlanta. It makes me feel like I almost won. I do have a lot of friends in Atlanta, so it was cool to finally see that. Plus, anytime a team, finally gets one over the finish line, finally pulls out that championship, finally pulls out that World Series, is cool. And it had been like decades and decades since that had happened. One of the first World Series, no joke, that I did watch recently was when the Cubs won the World Series after 100 years. So that's pretty cool. I feel like I was a part of it. I'd been, in the stands through all those other games and all those close calls before. I really feel like I was in the trenches with all the real hardcore Bears fans that could appreciate that for the first time, since it was kind of my first time watching a World Series in a long time. But during the Braves game, this World Series, I'm sure a lot of the fun had been taken out of it. Some wind was knocked out of the sails, at least while the series was still going on. And that was because it was deemed racist to cheer the classic Braves tomahawk cheer. I'm not even kidding. Sports Illustrated actually wrote, "Why does MLB still live synchronize team-sanctioned racism in Atlanta?" And that is because they're doing the the Braves chant. And this was a major story. I mean, Sports Illustrated was covering it. This was flying around on Twitter. Everyone being like, well, we can't cheer for a team that is just blatantly being racist in the stands by cheering on their team. This kind of thing has popped up before, obviously. I'm sure everyone or a lot of people remember the Washington Redskins situation, and they actually did change their name. However, when even Native Americans were polled, 90% were completely fine. Native Americans were totally fine and liked the Redskins name. And it's kind of cool having your tribe or, your community being one of the greatest franchises in football history and have everyone there to cheer and all this kind of stuff. 90% were totally fine. We're like, this is awesome. But it's always these woke mob people on social media or big tech or on ESPN. They're like, oh my gosh, well, how could we have let this happen for so long? I'm offended on your behalf as a rich white male or female or whatever. I'm so offended. But fortunately, that is only the script that they're trying to get the culture and the society on, is to look at everything through this prism of divisiveness and everyone being different or trying to offend one another or all this kind of nonsense and putting each other against each other. Because as you can see in reality, it's very different. When you get the polls of these different communities and how they feel about what they're supposed to be offended by, it is very different than what is being portrayed by people that are on the left and what they keep trying to insinuate is the worst possible thing. I'll show you a little glimpse of what the reality is. The reality is more like this. The reality is a crowd of tens of thousands of people all gathered together from every race and class and ethnic background, all cheering together for their team, the Tomahawk Chalk, with Donald Trump leading the charge. That is not what the mainstream will push. That is not what the popular narrative is in the culture and in film and at ESPN and at Disney and all these other woke nonsense places like MSNBC. The reality is this: when you get out in the real world and unplug, go to a community, go to a major sporting event, they all say the same thing. They all say, "Let's go, Brandon." They all cheer the Tomahawk Chalk. We're all in it together. We're having a great time. It's just these key players and these key situations that are trying to tell this story to prop up the matrix around people and keep them in a world that is not true. That it's just not the way that it is. The reality is people get along great together. The reality is people are not offended by everything. The reality is it's a very, very small percent of loud, annoying people that try to push the agenda in a direction. And you get to see things like this. You can't control a crowd of people at these stadiums. You can't pay every single person and have them on the dime that answer to a specific script at all these major news outlets that are like, okay, this is what you're approved to talk about. This is what you're not approved to talk about. Every time you buy a ticket to one of these major venues where everyone is gathered together, you get to see a little bit closer. You get to see a better demographic pool, a more natural demographic pool. And they all seem to be saying the same thing. They all seem to be saying, "Let's go, Brandon," together. They all seem to not be offended by this. They all seem to be rising up against critical race theory and these divisive things that are being taught in our schools and are standing up to the lie that's being pushed by people in the mainstream media. That is the reality, and that does give me hope. It gives me hope that a lot of people are getting a little more off script, and they are seeing reality as it is, not as the media and people in political power want it to be. I'm Ben Davies, and that was Off Script.